Hello, my babies. Welcome back to another episode of I Am Sat. My name is Maddie Quinney. I am the host of this podcast, and thank you for being here. I am sorry that last week I missed a week without literally saying anything. I'll be honest, I'd be surprised if any of you listeners even noticed. So that's kind of the vibe here. You know, we're recording when it feels right? Like some days I just am not feeling it. Some days I am also really fucking busy and I just can't really seem to find the time to lock in because also, I don't know, with this podcast, I really prefer to, like, when I am recording, I don't know, just be like here and locked in for it. I don't want to give you some half-assed bullshit. I feel like I've done that in the past, and then I leave feeling just not really proud of the work that I did. And a lot of you guys who are listening right now are supporters of just me, because you know me and you want to support my whatever the fuck I'm doing here. And I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. So we're recording when it feels authentic and when it feels right. And that's what we're all about here at I Am Sat, is authenticity and being yourself and just doing whatever feels right for you. So last week, recording didn't feel right for me, but this week we're ready. So let's fucking go. Okay. So this week, I am honestly going to get into it pretty soon. I have always been really interested in Buddhism and just the religion as a whole. I've had certain ideas about the religion, and it's always made me want to actually like look into it and see what the fuck it's all about. So I did that this week. I studied my little heart out trying to understand this religion. And let me tell you something. There is so much to it. So much to it. I won't even scratch the surface with this episode, but I will kind of give you a layperson's understanding of the religion, or as I understood it when I researched it. So big disclaimer here. I do not claim myself as a Buddhist. I don't practice the religion necessarily. And I am just a girl who bought this book a few years ago called Introduction to Buddhism and decided that this week it was time to pick it up. So if any of you listening are Buddhist or understand and know a lot about the religion, please come for me. If I get anything wrong, please come for me. Welcoming the criticism and the feedback, because I don't want to be spreading misinformation, especially something so sensitive as like a religion. I don't want to be like spreading misinformation, but I think for the most part, assuming that the person who wrote this book knows what the fuck they're talking about, I think for the most part, everything I'm going to talk about will be true. So again, if you hear anything and you're like, Maddie, that sounds crazy, that's not how it went at all, please come for me. Okay? Thank you. Before we get into it, this episode is going to be jam-packed full of information. So we're not doing banger of the week or, what was the other thing that I do? Oh, lately it's been a cool fact of the week. This whole episode to me is a cool fact of the week. I didn't know really any of this stuff before I researched it, so we're going to count the episode as the cool fact of the week. However, local business of the week, I wanted to shout out Golden Braid Books in Salt Lake City. This is where I got this book that I derived pretty much all of my information from. The bookstore Golden Braid is a bookstore, but then also there's a cafe attached to it called Oasis, and it's just like all good vibes. It's kind of like a hippy dippy bookstore. You can find anything you want about Buddhism or mental health or chakras, Reiki, like all of those things at that store. Also, that is where I got my infamous tarot reading done. by Miss Jillian. So yeah, they do that. They do tarot readings. I think they do like reflexology too. They offer a lot of different services, and it's just like in a really cute area in Salt Lake City. So if you're here and you're interested, highly recommend like going on a little day date with yourself or with a friend or whoever to Oasis Cafe, and then popping over to Golden Braid Books to maybe find a little something for you. They sell sage, incense, like all that shit. You know, you get the vibe. I don't need to keep going on about it. Just check it out if you are interested. But yeah, that's where I got this book. So we're shouting that one out today. And yeah, let's get into it. I'm honestly really nervous for this because I study my heart out. And I hope I do this episode justice. I created a whole ass outline, more detailed than I ever have in the past. So I have high expectations for this episode. I don't know if it's going to go the way that I expect it to go, but I hope I do the religion justice, and I hope I do myself justice because I have spent hours studying and reading and listening to podcasts. So let's get into it. Okay, so as I've mentioned, I read this book called Introduction to Buddhism. This is written by, I think I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this name, and I'm so sorry. He, rest in peace, he died in 2022. So if he's here with us, I'm so sorry for getting your name wrong. I'm sure it's called, his name is Geshe Kelsang Gyatso. I can post a picture of this because if you're listening to this, it probably means nothing to you because you probably have no idea how that's spelled. Neither do I. Anyway, that most of my source material came from this, and this person the author who wrote this book, he was born in, get this, 1931 and died in 2022. So he was almost 100 years old. That's so crazy. He was a renowned Tibetan Buddhist master, scholar, and author who founded the Noooo Kadampa tradition. Basically, he brought a type of Buddhism called Kadampa. I'll be honest, I don't know what that is. I'll get into it, but I only studied like one part of Buddhism. There are different like kind of takes depending on what you resonate with when it comes to Buddhism. But he brought Kadampa Buddhism to the West, establishing over 1,400 meditation centers worldwide and writing 24 acclaimed books on Buddhism and meditation. So I think this guy's pretty legit. I think he knows his stuff. So we're going to assume that. Again, I got most of my source material from this book. So if I don't get something right, like, come for him. And then also I found a podcast called, oh my gosh. Oh, there it is. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Okay. Look, what I'm realizing is a detailed outline is no match for an ADHD girly. There's no match. So, good to know that the 2 hours I spent on this outline today might mean nothing. Whatever, it's fine. You're here for the ride, right? Like, you're along for the ride, right? Anyway, okay, moving on. The podcast I listened to was Learn Buddhism by Alan Peto. Alan Peto is an author on Buddhism and Buddhist teachings for beginners and is a lay Buddhist. So he's just kind of more of like a lay person, studies Buddhism, but practices it as a lay person. So yeah, that is where I got my source material. Hopefully they're accredited sources. They seem like it, but whatever. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I first want to cover the history of Buddhism and basically like where did this all start? Where did it all begin? So the first documented Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama. And he was born in around 563 BCE and died around 482 BCE. Also, something about BCEs, I forgot that like it's a countdown to 0. You know, I forgot about that. Anyway, moving on. He was born in Lumbini, which is now known as southern Nepal. I didn't know where Nepal was. The only memory I have about Nepal was that scene in Monsters Inc. where the monster, like the fucking abominable snowman, was like, "You're in Nepal." And that's all I know. So I said, "Where is Nepal?" It is actually a country northeast of India. So that's where that's at. And at the time, though, it was named Lumbini. So Siddhartha Gautama, the very first documented Buddha, he was born a prince to a royal family. And it's interesting. I'll kind of talk about my thoughts about this later, but it's interesting because apparently his mother, on the night of his conception, had a dream or like a vision of this white glowing elephant basically impregnating her with a son. And from that moment, she just knew that her son was going to be important and change history forever, which is fascinating. I just feel like there are so many stories like this all around the world and in every religion. It's so interesting. But yeah, he was born a prince of a royal family, and he lived a life of luxury and privilege, and he was really not surrounded by death or any type of like suffering necessarily, like his entire life, until he was at the age of 29. He encountered what Buddhism calls the 4 sights, which is birth, sickness, aging, and death. He encountered all of those at the age of 29. And this jarred him because he had never, I think for any normal person who is taught about death or birth or whatever growing up, like that stuff doesn't phase you because it's almost like a knowing that, you know, like if you're taught about these things, like for me personally, growing up in the Mormon religion, like I knew about death and birth and all of that since as long as I can remember. So to experience any of that was not very like, I don't know, like, or to talk about it or to experience the reality of any of that isn't as jarring. I mean, death is a different example or a different thing, but like, do you know what I'm saying? I think for any normal person who grows up with knowledge around that and conversations around that stuff, maybe encountering it firsthand in your life wouldn't be as jarring. But for him, he had never had like conversations around it, no experience around birth, sickness, aging, and death. So he experienced all of these things at 29, and it completely changed his perspective on life. And he decided that he needed to leave his life behind and go pursue a life of enlightenment. And at this point, from my understanding, in Nepal, or like that, what do you call that? Like the Middle East? Oh my gosh. What do you call that area? The Middle East? Okay, I think it is like with India and all of that. I believe at the time, this type of Buddhism practice was, I think, like woven into the community, but like there wasn't a verbiage for Buddhism, or there wasn't like a leader, there wasn't, you know what I mean? Like from my understanding, there were practices, but there wasn't like an organized religion. So having experienced these 4 sites, Siddhartha Gautama decides that he needs to leave his life behind. And his dad was like, "You are absolutely not leaving. No way. Marry this woman instead." So he gets married to this woman and has a child. And he still can't think about anything else but leaving his life behind on a journey to enlightenment. So he ends up leaving the palace life, and which there's a story in this book that is so interesting. If you grew up in Mormon culture, then I think you'd also find it interesting. But there's a story of him, allegedly, the night that he escaped the palace, I mean, there were guards everywhere, and his dad knew that he wanted to leave the palace, so he was under a lot of security and surveillance. But the night that he actually did end up leaving, apparently he put all of the guards to sleep by some like magic or whatever, and fled the palace and never looked back. And he just left. He left everything behind. From my understanding, all he had was like a robe, and he had nothing. So he goes on this journey, and he just starts walking, and he's encountering for the very first time what real poverty looks like, and what true sickness and death looks like firsthand. And he's coming to all of these realizations and epiphanies, and having like these existential crises and epiphanies really. And therein lies the Buddha. At age 35, after having gone on this journey, there's a story of him. He decided to sit under this infamous tree. I can't remember what it's called right now, but towards the end of his journey, he decided that he needed to sit under this tree and meditate until he reached what we now know as nirvana, which is a state of no suffering. And he did that. He just meditated for hours and hours and hours without breaking away from it until he reached a place of like complete and utter no suffering, and felt like enlightened and reached a place of enlightenment. And so that is the story of the Buddha. And after that, the rest of his life, for 45 years, he just goes on to teach and converse with people in his travels. He does revisit his family, apparently, and I guess his whole family all decide to convert to Buddhism after some time. His dad was a bit reluctant to it, but at some point he decided to convert as well. So yeah, he just spent the rest of his days being the Buddha and teaching Buddhism in the way that he, created it, I guess. So yeah, that's the history of the religion. Okay, so before I get into the doctrine of Buddhism and what they believe, as I understand it, I wanted to go through some key terms that I learned and will probably reference while I talk about the doctrine. So first we have Dharma, Dharma. Dharma refers to the teachings of the Buddha about the nature of reality and the path to liberation from suffering. It includes doctrines such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and teachings about impermanence, suffering, and non-self. More broadly, Dharma can also mean the universal truth or law that governs existence. So this is basically, Dharma refers to basically the whole entire religion and all of the Buddha's teachings. I won't go into the Four Noble Truths very much or the Eightfold Path. I feel like that's like a little bit heavier of doctrine for today. But yeah, it just refers to the doctrine of Buddhism. And when I reference the Buddha or a Buddha or whatever, a Buddha is an awakened or enlightened being who has fully understood the nature of reality and is free from suffering and the cycle of rebirth, which is called samsara. Samsara is rebirth. I have an official definition for that in a second too. But a Buddha is basically, there are different stages of enlightenment, I would say, in Buddhism, and the Buddha is kind of like the highest one that you can reach in this life. So, yeah. And then Sangha, that's Sangha. The Sangha is the community of Buddhist practitioners. Traditionally, it refers to the monastic community of monks and nuns, but in a broader sense, it can include all followers who practice the Buddha's teachings. So this is just like, Sangha is like a reference to the members of this religion or participants of this community. The three jewels are the three central refuges in Buddhism that practitioners rely on for guidance, which is 1, the Buddha, 2, Dharma, and 3, Sangha. So the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, what I just referred to, is like the community of the people, the doctrine, and then the Buddha himself or themselves, because I've learned there are many Buddhas in this religion. There's not just one. We have dukkha, that's Dukkha. Dukkha is commonly translated as suffering, but its meaning is broader. It refers to the unsatisfactory or imperfect nature of existence, including pain, dissatisfaction, impermanence, and the feeling that life never fully satisfies our desires. So, yeah, in simple terms, dukkha refers to suffering, but it's not just that. It's unsatisfaction and anything that leaves you feeling a bit more empty, I guess. Samsara is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that beings experience due to ignorance and craving. It is considered a state of ongoing suffering and dissatisfaction from which liberation is the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice. So samsara, I will get into this later, is the principle of rebirth. Buddhism believes in rebirth and reincarnation, and to be a being that has to experience reincarnation means that you haven't fully experienced enlightenment. So samsara is something that you go through that will basically help you understand like where you're at in that cycle of enlightenment. Because if you're dying and being reborn as something else entirely, then you have not reached full enlightenment, I guess, is the way I would say it. Nirvana is the complete liberation from suffering and the cycle of samsara. So once you reach nirvana, you no longer experience dukkha or suffering, and you no longer experience samsara or the cycle of rebirth. So like nirvana is achieved when ignorance, craving, and attachment are extinguished. Nirvana represents a state of perfect peace, wisdom, and freedom. And then finally, we have delusions. In Buddhism, delusions refer to misunderstandings or distortions of reality that keep beings trapped in suffering. The primary delusions are often described as ignorance, craving, or attachment, and aversion, which drive harmful actions and perpetuate samsara. So in my studies, I would like to, I don't know if this is fair to other practicing Buddhists, but to me, delusions feel like just the normal human condition. You know, like ignorance, craving, attachment, aversion. This is just kind of what you experience being a human, in my opinion. So, but in Buddhism, they call them delusions. So those are the basic terms that you will need to finish this crash course with me on Buddhism. As if I just, who would, like, how did I think I was like qualified for this? I don't know. But hey, I was interested in it and now we're here. So, okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the actual Buddhist doctrine. It's so fascinating, you guys. It's so fascinating. Okay, so let's start off. Like, what do they believe in is in terms of how did we get here, why are we here, and where are we going? Buddhism believes in reincarnation, as I've mentioned before. Until you reach a state of nirvana or enlightenment, the belief is that you're going to continuously be reborn into different types of beings based on karma. And karma is, oh my goodness, I just realized I didn't include karma in our terms. That's crazy because that is like one of the most important principles, I would say, in Buddhism. Okay, let's have an old-fashioned Maddie Quinney definition of what karma is, since I don't have my notes on that. According to Buddhism, karma is basically kind of like, I mean, we all know what karma is, right? Like what goes around comes around, right? But Buddhism has a bit more of like a scientific take on, I would say, on karma. Not just scientific, but also energetic and spiritual take on karma. So the karma refers in Buddhism to the actions that you make, and whether your actions are virtuous or non-virtuous will determine the type of fate you'll have in this life and in ongoing lives as well. With that being said, yeah, the type of karma you produce in this life will determine what type of reincarnation experience you'll have in the next life, what type of experiences you'll have here in this life. Because like I said, they believe in virtuous and non-virtuous actions. According to the book, virtuous actions refer to those that cause happiness, and non-virtuous are those that cause suffering. I'm going to save a lot of my takes on the religion for the end of the episode, but I did want to interject and say this part I kind of struggle with because, like, who's to say what makes someone happy and not happy, you know? Like, Buddhism believes that we're all kind of connected on the same type of hive of consciousness, or like stream of consciousness. And Buddhism also believes that we aren't that individual in our experience, which me personally, I can totally fuck with. And also, there are some things that do make some people happy and some people unhappy. Like, I'll go here, like, I don't know, pedophiles, like, for them to be into what they're into, that makes them happy, right? But it doesn't make other people happy, but it makes them happy. Like, people, there is diversity. I feel like there has to be an acknowledgement that there is diversity in what makes someone happy and what makes someone suffer. Because it just kind of depends on the person. So that's one thing I kind of struggled with, because I was like, okay, how are you supposed to determine what's virtuous and non-virtuous if your meter for that is what will make people happy? I just feel like that's a bit complicated and convoluted. So anyway, there's that. Okay, so in terms of karma and how it affects your reincarnation experience, Buddhism believes that there are 6 realms in which it is possible to take rebirth, 3 lower realms and 3 higher realms. The 3 lower realms are the animal realm, the hungry spirit realm, and the hell realm. The 3 higher realms are the human realm, the demigod realm, and the god realm. So, yeah, depending on what type of karma you produce in your life will determine what type of reincarnation tier you are in. So, in the next life, and for lives to come, there is a way to purify the negative karma that you've created in your life. This is done by recognition, remorse, committing to not repeating the acts or whatever, living ethically, practicing meditation and compassion, and generating positive actions that transform the mind, similar to repentance, if you are familiar with that in the Christian Catholic framework. So yeah, apparently according to Buddhism, you can purify your negative karma that you've produced in the past to help you on your road to obtaining a higher realm of reincarnation. In Buddhism, I know I've talked about dukkha, which is basically referencing suffering or unsatisfactory feelings or emotions, whatever. It's interesting because in my research, it seems to me that in Buddhism, the end goal of practicing Buddhists is to become enlightened, reach nirvana, and eliminate suffering through actions and controlling the mind. That's kind of the main goal. Is there's so much emphasis around eliminating suffering. Like, that's kind of what everything is about. And what, to me, after reading about Siddhartha Gautama, the original Buddha, it seems to me that's what the entire religion was created off of also, was to eliminate suffering. So anyway, again, I'm going to save my takes for the end. But yeah, there's a huge emphasis on that in the religion, I've come to understand. How do you become a Buddha? You have to understand the nature of suffering, practice the Eightfold Path, which, again, I'm not going to get too into that, but basically the Eightfold Path, from a super high level look at it, it is basically a path that teaches you how to live with wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline. So you have to do that. You need to purify the mind of ignorance, craving, and hatred, cultivate wisdom and compassion over many lifetimes, achieve complete enlightenment, and yeah, that's basically how you become a Buddha. I was interested too in researching like how it differs for women, because most organized religions have very different rules for women versus men. But I was pleased to find out that Siddhartha Gautama actually advocated for women to practice the religion and also have the same rights as men in the religion soon after he created it. So yeah, like women can also become Buddhas, and for them, they are called monastics or nuns instead of monks, but they can do all the same stuff. So kind of cool to find that out. In terms of how many Buddhas there are, Buddhism believes that there are countless Buddhas existing across space and time. So the number is unsure, but on this earth today, it sounds like there are 28 major Buddhas that people connect to and worship. One of the reasons why I was starting to get really like fascinated or interested in Buddhism is because I have my lash girl. Her name is Lammy. Have I talked about her before on the podcast? I'm not sure, but I love her down. She is the best. Like, her and I just like connect for real. We both are born on the same day, okay? July 28th. We're both born on the same day. And I don't know what it is about her. She's like this 55-year-old Vietnamese lady, like, but there's something about her. We just fucking connect, bro. And she tells me the craziest shit in the world. Like, she's lived a crazy life. I love her so much. She's so cool. But she is, in Vietnam, they practice Buddhism, and she practices Buddhism. And one time, one of my appointments, I was asking her about it because I've always been intrigued, obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. She informed me that of like the 28 major Buddhas, each Buddha was derived from a real person that went on a real journey to become a Buddha. So, like I said, in order to become a Buddha, you have to reach all of these types of milestones in terms of mental discipline and, you know, purifying your mind and becoming wise, like all of these things. But every single one of them also left their entire lives behind to go on this journey with seemingly nothing and reach enlightenment in this way. And apparently with each Buddha of the 28 that there are, each one has kind of like a different story. Obviously, they're all different people of different times, but each story kind of has like a different principle behind it. So for instance, like if you've ever seen the Happy Buddha, that one represents childlike energy. And so Lammy, my lash lady, was telling me that like for a lot of people who have sick children or whatever, they will like create an altar with the Happy Buddha because it represents like childlike energy, and they will pray to it or recite sutras. Sutras are like scripted prayers in Buddhism to this altar to basically manifest protection and healing for their sick child. So depending on what you're going through in your life, each Buddha kind of represents a different thing. And like you can just decide what resonates and decide how you want to incorporate that in your life. With Buddhism, it's interesting because it's not like they technically really worship any one thing, because they also don't really believe in a god. They believe in divine beings, but they don't believe in a god or like a one omnipotent being that controls everything or creates everything. Like they don't really believe that. To me, it seems like their god is karma. I mean, it depends on how you define God. I think in a lot of religions, God is the one that creates and makes the rules and provides judgment day or whatever. And if with that logic, it seems like karma is their god, which is kind of a cool concept, honestly, because then you are, I mean, in other Christian faiths where they believe that God will determine your fate or whatever, I mean, it is ultimately based off of your own actions too, but it just seems like you're a little bit more out of control with where you're gonna land, because you could have great intentions, but who knows? What if God is just like, no, you're still a shit person, like go to hell, you know? But with karma, it's like it feels more scientific. Like there's an equal and opposite reaction for every action kind of thing. So it seems like you might have a little bit more control. Anyway, it just kind of seems like with Buddhism, karma seems to be like more of the thing that they don't even like worship it. It's just the thing that controls their fate. So yeah, it's fascinating. Anyway, I'm not really sure how I got onto the whole God stuff, but moving on. Oh, yes, that's right. I was talking about worship. Worshipping has always been kind of like a weird concept to me personally, especially since leaving religion behind. I just think it's such, and I mean this respectfully, like, and also I'm saying this for myself. Everyone has what works for them. And just because it doesn't work for me does not mean I feel like that's how it should be for everyone. Just want to make a disclaimer. But for me personally, worshiping has always felt kind of strange. Like since I've left religion behind, I don't know. It just seems like such a crazy concept to like completely alter your entire life for a figment for like an alleged being or person or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Or just like completely worship. I don't know. Just the entire idea of worshiping is just so interesting to me. But I appreciate Buddhism, and like I kind of resonate with Buddhism in this way because they're not really out here like praying to a god. What seems to me, okay, and again, please come for me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that it's more of like the Buddhist participants typically will choose a Buddha that resonates with what they're going through in their life, and they will recite these prayers to their altar, or there doesn't even have to be an altar. They can just be at work, like reciting prayers, whatever. But it's like in an attempt to harness the energy of that Buddha to help them in their life. It's not like they're completely worshiping this thing or this entity. So I appreciate that. I like that personally. Finally, we can't talk about religion without talking about how they believe in death and what they believe about death, in my opinion. Because I don't know, I just feel like religion in general is all created off of death, the big unknown. None of us know what's going to happen next, you know? And I think like at the end of the day, religion and faith and everything about a God, a higher being, all this stuff is really just an attempt at like trying to make sense of what's going to happen next in this next life. So I believe you can't talk about religion without talking about what they believe in terms of death. In Buddhism, when it comes to death, they believe that yes, the body might die, but the consciousness lives on always. So at a part in this book, they even talk about how like if someone decides to commit suicide, they're not really like ending the suffering because they still live on. It's just that their body will die and they will start a new life as something else or someone else. So they believe that that consciousness is constantly alive and constantly going. So when it comes to death, that's what they believe in. However, a part of the religion and a part of practicing the religion is they instruct members or participants to meditate on certain thoughts about death. So I'm going to read those to you. Trigger warning: if death will send you into an existential crisis like it does for me, or the idea of death or talking about it, you can skip ahead. Just skip ahead because I get it. I understand. Some of the mantras are: I will definitely die. The time of my death is utterly uncertain. At the time of my death and after my death, only the practice of Dharma will help me. I will definitely die because there's no way to prevent my body from finally decaying. Day by day, moment by moment, my life is slipping away. That one, literally, I'm like, yeah, you're so right. My death will come regardless of whether or not I have made the time to practice Dharma. There are a few more. Sorry. Gonna keep going. I have no idea when I will die. I may be young and healthy, but this does not mean that I will die. I will not die soon. Many young people die before their parents. There is no certainty in this world. That one too, I'm like, yeah, oh my God, you're so right. Yeah, you're so right. As I like take a shot of tequila, I'm like, yeah. There are many causes of untimely death. For example, many strong and healthy people die as a result of unforeseen accidents. This human body is extremely fragile and can easily be destroyed even by the smallest of objects. At the time of my death, my wealth and possessions will be of no benefit to me. At the time of my death, my family and friends will not be able to help me. At the time of my death, even my body will be of no use to me. So, as a result of all of these mantras that I wouldn't say like instruct people, because it's not high demand. Like this religion is not high demand, but this is like part of the Buddhist practice is to recite these mantras and to remember these things and beliefs, or I guess realities, because hey, those will, yeah, that's a huge dose of reality right there. As a result, the Buddhist practice is to basically make these 3 resolutions, which is I will practice Dharma right now, I will practice Dharma purely. So yeah, something about like the death concept in Buddhism is kind of cool because the whole purpose of coming to terms with the reality of your death is all for the attempt at understanding how precious life is and how precious your human life is. in Buddhism, they believe that depending on how you get reincarnated in the next life, like if you are an insect in the next life, obviously like that is a lower tier to their belief, a lower tier of reincarnation, which means that your karma resulted in that type of life for you. In Buddhism, they really push this respect for and gratitude for your human life, because as a human, you can purify your negative karma in the past. And as a human and in this human experience, there are things that you can do and conceptualize that as an insect or a tree or a pig, you couldn't, right? So I don't know. Me personally, I really appreciate like reality and the call to reality of death. A lot of religions, I just don't feel like do that. Especially coming from a Mormon background, I feel like, death was never a thing that you talk about because you were never dying. Like, even in the Mormon framework, you still had your body at some point in time, right? Like, because you're going to be resurrected and everything, right? Like, death was like just not a thing, right? So I really appreciate the call to the reality of death in Buddhism, because I really resonate with that. Like, this life experience really is so short, and as a human, it is beautiful to live it. It's painful at times, but it's also beautiful. So I really like that. To end up the episode, and hopefully I don't take too much time. We're already like pretty far into the episode already, but I wanted to just kind of wrap this up with my takeaways and criticisms that I had of when researching the religion. When I started researching Buddhism, I went into it with some misconceptions. I did not think that Buddhism was an organized religion for some reason. I just kind of felt like it was more of like a mindset, more of like vibes, you know, like I didn't consider it to be an actual organized religion. And to my discovery, I realized that it is a fully organized religion. Like, so many teachings have been made about Buddhism, and not just teachings, but like there are structured principles and doctrines in the religion. Like, right and wrong and morality is a big part of it too. I just feel like for some reason I didn't think that Buddhism was an organized religion, but it is. I also think like going into all of this research, it was interesting because as I've been so open and wanting to know more about Buddhism for the last few years, I also wasn't expecting this, but I just had such a chip on my shoulder with religion. And once I really realized that Buddhism is an actual organized religion, I just kind of found myself like super resistant to any of the principles of the religion. Like, I was defiant. I was like, ugh, I don't like any of this. Like, I hate organized religion. Like, I hate all of this, you know? And so many things about the religion, like, weren't making sense to me when I was thinking about it, because I was just like out to find reasons why this isn't true, or like why organized religion sucks. And you know what? That's my own human condition, because we're all out here having our own narratives and trying to affirm those narratives. And I need to check myself. And at some point I did. And you know what? I actually got so much out of this research, which I will get to. But yeah, I was really highly, highly critical of researching this religion and the religion in general. And yeah, I just wasn't expecting that, because I have always been so curious about Buddhism. So not expecting that. Some of the criticisms that I do have about the religion are, and again, like, if this is your bread and butter, if this is what you live by, like, there is no tea or shade. I'm just out here. I'm just a girl who is trying to make sense of religion and different religions. And these are some true criticisms I found myself having, and I want to talk about it. So sorry if this offends you. Anyway, okay, so I just thought the concept of suffering in the religion was so interesting because like the whole point of eliminating dukkha in your life and reaching a point of nirvana is to eliminate the suffering, right? And to transcend the human condition or whatever. However, I do think it's so human to want to not suffer. You know, like when I was thinking, I think I actually said this earlier in the podcast, but this really just was blowing my mind. Like that Siddhartha Gautama, like he started this religion as a way to escape suffering. And I think that in and of itself is so human. We don't like to feel discomfort. We don't like to feel uncomfortable. And I just felt like it's a bit ironic that we're out here trying to transcend the human condition when really, like, if we are no longer suffering, like, I don't know, that act in and of itself feels so human to me. And, you know, I'm not a Buddha. I don't know what it's like to reach nirvana or enlightenment. But another criticism I had was like, okay, to me, to eliminate all suffering in your life, like that feels pretty hollow. Not that I like suffering, but I just feel like without the shit in your life, you can't experience like really tangible joy. And I'd like to imagine what it might feel like to reach enlightenment. And I'm sure it probably feels very like fulfilling, very peaceful, very grounded. But I wonder too if that no longer makes room for like really intense joy or like, you know what I mean? I just feel like, I don't know. And that gets me into my next thing about the religion is in the book, like Dharma, when they refer to Dharma or like the doctrine of Buddhism, they also kind of use that term Dharma is so interesting because it refers to the doctrine of Buddhism, but it also refers to protection. And like really reading this book made me realize like how much protection, like quote unquote protection, comes up in this religion. Like the whole motivation is to protect yourself from suffering. And I don't know, that just feels so human to me to like try to protect yourself from hurting. I don't know. I just like when I think about it in a mental health perspective or from a mental health perspective and from like an evolutionary human perspective, we are out here trying to protect ourselves 100% of the time. And that is so human of us to do that. So it just, I don't know. Does that make sense? I just feel like it's a bit ironic to create an entire religion on the basis of protecting yourself from suffering to transcend the human condition when the whole doing all of that is so human, you know, like you are still human at the end of the day, right? Like, I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting. And like, honestly, that brings me to another thing that I thought about was how interesting it is that like transcending the human condition while still being a human is giving very like the Jesus story to me. And also with Siddhartha Gautama, like his story with being impregnated or with his mom becoming pregnant via like this white glowing elephant telling her that her son is going to be so special. You know what I mean? Like it's giving the Jesus story. And I don't know. I just think I don't know if it's necessarily a criticism, but it's definitely an interesting thing to think about, that there are so many types of like so many different versions of the same story I'm realizing. And I want to keep learning about other religions, because I'd be so fascinated to find and to see if there are any other stories similar to the Buddha story or the Jesus story, you know? Like, I just think it's interesting. Okay, another criticism I had was, I feel like when it comes to Buddhism and kind of reaching, because like part of enlightenment that I learned in the book is like kind of reaching this attitude that like nothing bothers you at all. Like nothing could literally ever bother you, which I don't know. Like, I don't like being bothered, right? I don't like being bothered, but I also am like, okay, then what? Like, does nothing matter to you at all? Like, what kind of life is that? You know, like, is that, it feels just kind of like flatline to me if nothing matters to you. Anyway, I just feel like it can also, from a mental health perspective, kind of approach the toxic positivity realm, which I don't think is healthy. Me personally, I don't think it is. I think like as a human being, like whether or not you transcend consciously, like in your mind, like whether or not you do that, you still are living in a human body. And I do believe the human body keeps the score. And so if something does bother you and you need to process that shit and work through it, but you decide to just let it go, that shit's gonna get stored somewhere in your body. And like, you can't run away from that. That shit will literally kill you. So I don't know. I think it's just tricky. It can kind of touch into the toxic positivity realm, which isn't my vibe necessarily, and I don't think that's totally helpful. Sorry, I have two more. I am a judgmental queen when it comes to religion. Sorry. That's just who I am. But we're gonna end this episode on a good note, I promise. Just hang in there. Another criticism I have is me personally, I really struggle with the idea of like morality in terms of religion and how that relates to where you're going in the next life. Like, I just don't know if me personally, I believe that like morality will have, I just struggle with the idea of morality in general. Like, I believe that there's like a scale of like lightness and darkness. But I feel like it's more scientific than it is a morality thing when it comes to like the grand scheme of things. I don't know. That just makes a little bit more sense to me, because who is to say what's good and bad? Like, that means there's an entity that is determining that. And I don't know. I just don't know if I believe that. So the whole concept of like how your morality will affect your next lives and all that, like, I don't know if I believe that there is one overarching moral compass that is like determining where we're going to be for the next life or whatever the fuck. Like, I just don't know if that doesn't feel, I don't know if it's necessarily a criticism, but it's just something I don't know if I believe in. And I guess that brings me to like the final criticism I have of the religion is like, this is all religions that I've looked into. I don't get it. I just feel like it's so weird to frame like morality and having to be a good person to ultimately be a selfish act, right? Like in Buddhism, like, the motivation behind being a good person and having good karma is so that way you can reach a higher tier of reincarnation, right? And at the end of the day, that's like a selfish thing. Like, that's self-serving. I don't understand why we can't just be good people for the sake of being good people and having empathy and just caring about how we treat other people. Like, I have never understood that ever with religion. It just seems like a way to keep sketchy people in line, which there's a time and place for that. But I don't know. I just feel like outside of keeping sketchy people in line, I don't think I believe in being a good person in order to secure your spot in the next life. Like, I just don't believe in that. And whether or not that actually is the case when I die, I guess I'll find out. Until then, I'm just going to try to be a good person because I have empathy and I care about the people in my life, and I just want to be a good person because I want to. Like, period, you know? So anyway, that's it for my criticisms. These are my takeaways. And we will be leaving this on a good note, rest assured. My takeaways are, I really appreciate the way that the religion, I've said this already, but like calls to the reality of death. I think it's, me personally, like from my perspective, I think it's a great way to, it's scary. It's uncomfortable to get familiar with the reality of death and how it could happen at any moment. However, I think it's a great way to harness and activate more gratitude in your life and to not sweat the small stuff. Like, that's one of my biggest takeaways from researching Buddhism. And it's so interesting because, like I said, when I started this research, I had a chip on my fucking shoulder and I was just like, I fucking hate religion, like all this stuff. But then it's interesting because like this whole time I've been wanting to like get something out of this, and that will help me be a better person and like enhance my life or whatever. And it's interesting that since I've started researching it, I have just naturally found myself in situations like with Spencer or something where he might say something, or we might have a situation where I usually might get like triggered or activated or something like that. And I remember through my research on Buddhism that like you can control your mind to some extent, and you can pick and choose your battles. And some battles I think are delusions, to give credit to Buddhism, but not all battles are delusions. Some are worth fighting. And I'm realizing that there's a lot of power in recognizing when something's kind of like a delusion or just a trigger. And it's like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm more compassionately letting things go with compassion. And that's another thing I really, really love about the religion, is how much emphasis there is on self-compassion, but also like compassion for the world and all living beings. And I don't know, the religion just like really embraces every single living being and teaches the importance of having respect for every living being. And I think that is such a cool perspective. I think a lot of religions, like, I mean, I've only been Mormon my life, and in Mormonism, I felt like I had to be completely selfless. Like, I had to completely abandon myself in order to be there for other people and be a good Mormon and be a good person, right? Something I love about Buddhism is that it's not selfless. It's like all-encompassing. So when it comes to compassion, it's not just compassion for yourself, but compassion for all living things and everything around you. Like, I love that. And I want to adopt that into my own life way more often and in a much more conscious way. And I guess finally, like, I just appreciate that out of all the religions I do know about, I don't know about very many, but I do appreciate how nuanced Buddhism is. And it seems like it really is just all about what works for you and what you resonate with. There are so many different things that you can resonate with. There are different like types of Buddhism and everything. Like it feels like a religion with no shame. And I appreciate that a lot. And I think that's really cool. And yes, at the end of the day, it is an organized religion. And for me, I have qualms with that right now. Maybe not in the future, but right now I do. But like, for an organized religion, it seems really fucking cool. And I really enjoyed researching it. And I don't think I will ever find myself being all in on one type of belief system. I think that's what's cool about this life is like, and also detaching yourself from any kind of organized religion is learning that you can kind of just like make up your own religion. Not really like, I mean, not that I'm out here trying to like have people follow me. That's not what I mean. But like you can take what resonates with you here and there and create your own thing, you know, that you fuck with, you know, and it may not, the people in your life may not fuck with it, but you do. And that's all that matters, you know? But yeah, after researching this, I definitely want to practice being more mindful and like learning how to control my mind and pick my battles. And just like I do actually appreciate the like unbothered attitude. I think for me personally, it's like all in a balance. I don't want to be like all one thing or all not one thing, you know, but I do want to try to practice having more unbothered energy when it matters and recognizing when those moments come that don't matter to be bothered, you know, and just learning to compassionately like let it slide, you know. I think a lot about like this meditation that my therapist has me do. This is kind of a tangent. Sorry, I'm talking so much, but thanks for being here. My therapist has me do this meditation called Leaves on a Stream. And it's basically where you go inside your mind. You know, first like take a few breaths, like get in tune with your breathing. And then in your mind, you go to a place with, like in my mind, it's like a dock out onto this river with like trees surrounding each bank. And the point is every thought that you have will be attached to a leaf that falls off a tree, and you watch it float down the river. And it can go as fast or slow. It might get stuck, you know, but it's all in an attempt to observe it without judgment and just watch it and let it exist. And I think like Buddhism teaches a lot of that type of stuff, and I want to consciously more like implement that stuff more into my life, especially when it comes to being bothered about things. Like I want to learn how to observe my annoyances or triggers or whatever with a bit more observation rather than judgment, and see where that takes me. I think that's a way more compassionate way to look at things anyway. And so I will be taking that with me. And I want to get into meditation more. Researching all of this made me realize I want to rediscover meditation. I used to do it all the time. I love meditating. But I just haven't really been doing it very often. So stay tuned for my Buddhism journey, whatever that looks like. Also, I have to say before I go, I was telling my lash lady, Lammy, at my latest appointment that I was researching Buddhism. And so we were talking about it, and she invited me to go to a Buddhist temple with her in South Jordan. So I agreed, and we don't have a date set yet, but we will be going. And I can't wait to talk about that when it happens. I'm so excited. She's the fucking best. And I can't wait to like just explore this world and visit a temple in Utah. Like, what the fuck? This is crazy, you know, like so cool. Anyway. Okay, I've been talking for way too long. This was a pretty hefty episode with a lot of information. I hope that if any of you listening are also interested in Buddhism, I hope that you learned a thing or two today from me. I hope I was able to make sense and concisely tell the story, but I guess I'll find that out when I'm editing. We'll see what happens. But either way, I'm here for this. I had a lot of fun researching it. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for next week. I'm hoping next week I'll have Parker on to talk about the real history of Utah. We are going to cover what we thought the history was versus what that history actually is. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be very, very interesting. And I cannot wait to sit with you next week. Bye.